All really exciting stuff. But I think to get an industry perspective, I want to introduce you to Evan Scheckman, the CTO of @Radical Media in New York. He's going to speak to you about the evolution of talent and systems and how it ties into that pro video market. Evan?
Fantastic, thanks. You know, I never thought I would be called on stage by Autodesk, because the way that I came my career, Autodesk was like the hot chick in high school that I would never talk to. Then I heard that she's into geeks, and so here I am, which is totally cool. Thank you. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story, I guess, of how we came up, right? And I always like to give a bit of context. About 10 plus years ago, at least I experienced the rapid democratization of digital video products. And this continues to accelerate to this day. There are a bunch of products that added to this democratization. The VX class of cameras, if you remember, in DV, when it arrived, it redefined price performance, and it blew away all the barriers to entry for high-quality digital acquisition and brought about the change of FireWire, right? Inexpensive hard drives, codecs from cameras and computers. This was a very big deal, and this was a catalyst for an amazing amount of change. Outpost Digital, when I founded it, it rode the wave of this democratization, and in many ways was the benefactor of all of the things that came from it. Here are our humble beginnings, all right? When Apple was going out of business and computers looked like Jell-O molds, that we started doing Final Cut Pro work that no one would touch with a 10-foot pole. The talent that we were able to attract coming up from the basement or from schools really grew up on suites of software, what became Final Cut Studio and the CS package, which continues to this day. So what happened is we have a generation of creative professionals that were raised on having access to a pretty wide tool set all the time. They were able to push the limits of color and design, and really, this became, for me, the intersection of design and editorial, these packages. Then something, for me, changed. I met this man. He said, I don't know exactly what it is that you do, but I do know I don't want you doing it for anyone else. And this is our visionary CEO, John Kamen, of Radical Media. And together we figured out what it is that we were going to do. Radical Media is classified as a transmedia company, and we're a multinational company that tells stories on a wide number of platforms. And we tell it on those platforms not because they are cool, but because that is where eyeballs are. It is the fragmentation of viewing and time shifting. Documentary television for Sundance, this is our Iconoclast show, or musical documentaries for MTV, a lot of documentary work. We're big storytellers. The 25th anniversary of Graceland, which is Under African Skies. We tried to break the mold of music videos. We did that with the Johnny Cash Project, the communal art project. One of our fantastic visionary directors put together the Arcade Fire's Wilderness Downtown narrative, websites for NASA, Appumentaries, which we trademarked for Sting and his 25th year as a solo artist, apps for the Gagosian Gallery, experience design for Nike, and of course, everyone's seen this, our brilliant directors getting involved with great storytelling like The Most Interesting Man in the World. The crop of talent that we've attracted for over a decade pretty much knows these three packages, and you can swap out Premiere for After Effects depending on who you're talking to, the old Final Cut or the new Final Cut. And so there is a legacy of that timeline-based storytelling, the vertical editing, and that kind of effects integration, and what those suites bring to bear. That's what our crop of talent knows. That's where their heads are at. These disruptive technologies have created amazing opportunities for people like myself and a lot of other businesses just like us. Of course, DV Cam was one of the oldest and most classic disruptions. Red, which forced almost everyone to redefine their terms and brought 4K and better to the masses. Solid State, which continues to transform acquisition and storage. And of course, things like Final Cut Pro 10, which are a delayed reaction to a bunch of changes happening in the technology business of media. This is a mouthful, I know, but the nonlinear editor, a person who came up on these tools today, our clients, they understand that we've had access to a lot of tools for a long time and how they have the same things that we use on their own laptops. And so there is an expectation that has changed about what the person sitting at the desk is able to do and is responsible for. The loading, logging, editing, temp text, rough mix, rough effects, a color pass, keying, and light tracking. We know that a good creative professional in any one of these suites can sit and do this work inside the NLE. Loading is file-based now, so that's actually started to change the workflow. Documentary work that we do, of course, we still have tape, but everything is moving this way from an acquisition standpoint. Editing is done natively or it's done raw, which is a major transformation and a time saver. The color pass, in many cases, is done in the tool that's inside the NLE, and they're great. Some of them are perfect, depending on the budget and who you're delivering to. Some of them are done in another application in the suite. Some of them are done in third-party applications altogether. The same thing goes for keying. We're doing it in the NLE or via a plugin or a third-party system. And tracking, although we do it in the suite, it's more elemental. We're tracking a blur or a logo. In most cases, we go to a third party. We don't even know what to call the artist who sits at the desk anymore. We don't. If you call them an operator, it's an insult to their creative being. If you call them an editor, it's too limiting because they have a lot of other skills that they're able to leverage to tell a story. We have the predator, the producer-editor, the person who does their own budget, does their own shooting, and does their own editing. They're a dangerous breed. The online editor, there's a person who has maybe more of a, you ask any kid out of college about what is the size of standard definition broadcast in pixels, and they have no idea. So the online editor, but they know how to, they know how to tweet. The online editor is a person who has maybe more of a technical skew and is using the same tools to put a coat of polish. Look, online and offline editing, those walls, they fell apart years ago, but there's still a mentality that exists. Of course, the colorist, again, limiting, a person who really does beautiful work and brings, color in many cases is another character in our stories. The effects artists, these are these highly elevated people, usually with an accent, who almost know a secret code when it comes to visual effects work. And the composite artist, an even more specialized breed that usually sits in a completely gray room. They're artists, they're storytellers. These tools, we don't even know what to call people anymore. This is a dilemma. ProRes is a very important thing and happened many years ago as the acquisition business began to change and moved towards codecs and workflows that were not optimized for the edit. ProRes is like the Esperanto of the digital world. It is the great leveler, right? It is cross-platform. It is in support of all the NLEs, and of course, it's built into Smoke now, which is a very big deal for pure broadcast people. XML, that's very dramatic, I know. XML is nothing new. In fact, XML has existed in the online world and the way that databases speak to front ends or the way that we create data feeds for people to parse and display. But XML, in my opinion, for modern systems, has superseded the EDL. This is deep, rich, verbose language that protects the work that you've done in one system and lets you carry it across to a more specialized system. This unlocks the ability to move anywhere, laterally, up or down. So here's our Grey Goose Cherry Noir spot, a high energy spot that is airing now that we put together, some in Final Cut 7 and some in Final Cut 10. I was able to move from 7 to 10 using beautiful XML tools, and even more importantly, was able to move into Smoke to finish. And that's where all the effects work was done for this Grey Goose spot. As simple as it is, of course, there's always a lot of visual effects that you shouldn't see. And this was done in Smoke. The UI was bigger than my screen. That brings me to Smoke. This crop circle logo that was probably put here by aliens. What it made me realize was that a lot of the workflows that we've developed from these suites of software, that to me they were becoming a house of cards. We had to learn too many individual applications and be masters of media management to move in between these pieces of software. You could take each one of the pieces of software from a suite apart, and they're amazing unto themselves. Yes, they're more powerful together, but it is a road to the same old place for us as an industry and me as a business. So the rethinking of workflow became important. Things like Final Cut 10, much to the dismay of many people, is a rethinking of a workflow. I think Autodesk has shown an incredible sensibility to bringing this product to market with a sensitivity to the way that people who tell stories and work in timeline-based metaphors, the way that we expect to work. The fact that I was able to sit down at Smoke and actually try the software using intuition, this is the way I think it should work, and it actually did, really was a breakthrough. For me personally, it's the heritage of power and sophistication of more than 20 years of refinement of tools from the upper echelons, the aspirational people who were doing work that we all want to really do. And it's now brought down to a package that, one, I can afford, and two, I can use. This is the familiar paradigms and workflows that we're all used to as professionals, now brought into a package that unleashes an unbelievable amount of power on systems we may already own for an entirely new user base. For us, we both work solo and we work with clients. And I'm not bashing After Effects. It'll continue to have a place in our environment, even as we start to use the new version of Smoke. But when we're doing client-driven sessions of effects-heavy work, After Effects, in my opinion, is encumbered by its own interface paradigm. And it is not the most friendly, nimble system when we want to make changes on the fly. You saw node-based effects. That is amazing. And that is the power to iterate. Whether you're a solo artist at home in your underwear doing whatever it is that you do, or you're in a facility where you're hopefully fully clothed, the ability to iterate very quickly by dragging those nodes, it is amazing. It is what is beyond track-based workflow. The fact that, at least for me, if I open up a tutorial in a program that I'm trying to learn, I usually open the tutorial first before the manual and backwards engineer, see how it was put together to get a basic understanding of what I'm doing. The fact that I'll work in the way that I'm used to working in a track-based metaphor and then go to Connect Effects and see how it's wired up, this is going to add a level of comfort and accessibility to people who may have been off-put by previous versions. So for me, it's the super app story. To a certain extent, it's the end of round tripping. It is putting all of our thought equity into one product, so it is the efficiency of training. It is the efficiency of knowledge sharing and project sharing. We are super excited about this version. It will have a transformative effect on our business. And to me, it also de-emphasizes, to a certain extent, what it is I need from a storytelling tool. You know, the precipice that many people are on at this particular NAB about what nonlinear editor they'll choose because of what Apple has done. Well, it's less important to a certain extent. It's about media management and speed of storytelling, but where I go with that story has become more important than ever before, and for us, it's going to be Smoke. Thank you very much.